Right, you're live.
Excellent. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting of September 22nd, 2022. My name is Scott Memhard, Ward 1 Counselor and Chair of this committee. With us also is Tony Gross at large and Vice Chair, Counselor Jeff Worthley at large. We also have Mayor Greg Verga, City Auditor Kenny Costa. Diane, what's your title now? It's a Assistant Auditor. Is that correct? Yes?
Yes,
We'd like
that's
to
correct.
Welcome our new Assistant City Auditor, Diane Katz. With us as well is CFO John Dunn and also DPW Director Mike Hale, who's taking out time to join us from a challenging personal week, I believe.
Thank you.
So, welcome all. It's just shocking. My friend Steve Scatterday, I guess, was one of the first on the scene. On the railroad.
Steve's a neighbor to the crosswalk.
Yep. Did I see someone else join us just now? No, I think we're good.
Smith is
Eric Smith, Chief Smith.
Oh, that's who I saw pop up here. Chief Eric Smith.
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome. We'll go ahead and start our budget meeting consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and to listen to the meeting in real time and to participate when necessary. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to speak, request to speak. And if you are watching on a computer or other device, there is a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options to be recognized. We're going to follow the agenda as posted. And the first item is a memorandum for our DPW Director requesting acceptance of a small scale initiative award for the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Counselor. So annually, we apply for a recycling dividends grant through DEP. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure the benchmarks change as our recycling milestones change, but we were not awarded that this year. But early winter, they let us know that we would be eligible for the small scale initiative grant, which is a very small grant, $1,500 that will be used to reimburse some of our recycling efforts at Public Works. That's what this is.
Great. Well, no grant is too small. And the purpose for that is very welcome. Councilors, do you have any questions or discussion?
Yes, for sure.
Councilor Worthley?
I don't remember off the top of my head how much we spent on recycling. Is that a number that you have at the top of your head, Mike? And I'm not gonna hold this up, but just for information purposes.
Well, I mean, there's curbside recycling, and then there's the special programs that we offer, like, appliance drop off, scrap metal, hazardous household collection days, tires. There's a whole host of things that we have special collection days or drop off days at Public Works. And those programs have ballooned in price in the past few years. And we're about to see that again with the textile recycling or textile disposal ban, which mattresses and clothing can no longer be incinerated and they can't be picked up curbside with your trash any longer. That goes into effect in November. So there's a number of programs that grants like this can help offset some of the cost, but certainly not all the cost. Our recycling disposal fee is set at $0 right now, $0. We just pay the actual collection of it, not the disposal of it. Communities across the Commonwealth are looking at $76 to $125 a ton right now with new contracts. So we're fortunate. Well, we still have a contract, but that won't last for many more years.
Something we should keep in mind. I'm good. Thank you.
Councilor Gross?
I'm good.
That being said, I'll go ahead and read the motion. Budget and Finance Committee moves to recommend that the City Council accept under Mass General Law 4453A a state grant for the Massachusetts Development of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP, for a Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant for small scale initiatives in the amount of $1,500 to purchase supplies for the recycling program. The grant period is through June 30th, 2022, and there is no local match for this grant. Is that date correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I so move.
Second.
Any further comments, questions, or discussion?
I just have, in case this question comes up about June 30th, 2022, John or Kenny, can you answer? Is there going to be, do we have to have another vote to accept this money or to move it or spend it or anything? Or is it just,
I can answer that. So typically, when we have grants that expire, we ask the department to request an extension of the grant, so a time extension. So this does happen at times, even at the school. It happens as well. We'll ask to see if we can get an extension on the grant, and typically the grantor will be okay with that. So typically a letter or a contract form or something that will allow us to extend the grant. So typically that's not an issue.
okay, so there'll be no further action required by us.
No.
Okay, great, thanks.
Very good. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote. Councillor Gross,
Yes,
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard, yes. The motion passes unanimously on a vote of 3-0. Excellent.
Thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
If I may,
thank you, Mike.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, is it possible for us to potentially reorder our agenda, given Mike Hale's driving and coming from family events, and if there's anything he's here for, that we could take that earlier in the agenda at your discretion, of course.
I'm happy to do that. You're referring to the borrowing for the Mount Pleasant Avenue infrastructure project, which is item number 4 on our agenda.
Yeah, and anything else that Mike is here for. I want to be safe, and I appreciate him being here. We all do.
I'm not sure if Mike has input regarding the Magnolia Pier funding extension, or
I can be here to answer questions should there be some that John cannot answer.
So we
Okay,
could
well-
take those earlier. I just feel like that'd be the right thing to do.
sure. I appreciate that suggestion. Thank you very much, Councillor. Why don't we just go to item number 3? We'll skip over Elder Services fundraising for the moment. Item number 3 is a memorandum from the CFO requesting an amendment to the loan order request for the Magnolia Pier funding repairs, increasing it from $1,150,000 to $1,541,350. So is that John or Mike, or who would like to, the mayor?
Yes, so I'm sure you've all seen the memo from John. So a little brief history here. This happened before I was around. Some of you were here before when the pier was rebuilt. There was a new pier installed, a used float, and I guess an oversized ramp. The ramp and float got destroyed in a subsequent storm, and it's been well over a year and a half, 2 years since they've been in place. When I got here in January, we started to look into this and realized there wasn't anything going on. So we had a meeting with the relevant department heads to talk about this. And we began the process to find the funding for, Mike, John, you can correct me if I'm off, but $40,000, somewhere between $40,000 and $45,000 to do some engineering to redesign the ramp and the float system. That is underway. We are actually in permitting at this stage. The plan is to start construction hopefully by the spring, depending on weather and currents. But in the meantime, we got a nice check from FEMA in the amount of $391,000, $391,349.78. And this loan order that John's memo is referring to, we're looking to up what you had already authorized, 1.15 and for the project to include that 390 odd thousand for a total of $1,541,350. And this we have no quotes yet, but this should be enough to cover what we anticipate for this new ramp and float system. And the new system will be gallows type. I'm not the expert at this. Mike can fill in the gaps, but basically allowing us to lift the ramp out of the water when we're predicted to have bad weather, so we can avoid hopefully what happened the last few times. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mike to fill in any pieces that I might have left out.
I don't think there's any pieces that you left out, Mayor. It's just to kind of play on what the gallows system is a little more. The gallows system will be piles driven adjacent to the ramp system, kind of an A-frame setup, better terms for it, but you can picture an A-frame setup. There'll be a cross member, and there'll be kind of a block and tackle, so to speak, that will allow this ramp to be raised when the seas are rough. If the seas are really rough, the float will be pulled back into the beach and kept safe until the storm is passed. Then it can be brought back out and the ramp lowered back into place. And we are in the middle of permitting on this right now. We couldn't simply amend our permit. We had to apply for a new permit for this just because it was never there before. And like the mayor said, we're looking to bid this, wintertime, start spring construction. That's it.
Can anyone address whether this will allow us to have the dinghy access that we've been getting repeated requests to reinstate?
This does not, I'm sorry.
No, Mike, yeah, that will ultimately be up to the Waterways Board, but this does not focus on that. This is a rebuild of the ramp and the float system, or redesigned rebuild of those two.
Councilor Gross, Councilor Worthley?
The dinghy dog, that is, the dinghy stuff is a completely different issue, whether or not they tie them back to the floats or, whatever decision the Waterways Board makes, but they're completely separate from each other on this. There's no relationship to the two. And this is, the ramp we're still using the ramp that came with the rebuild, I believe. I know the ramp was not destroyed. The ramp was just overbuilt, and the float was built at the high school with the old ramp that was a lot smaller, and it was fine for that, but it could not withstand. It was a little bit too large for this heavy ramp and the waves, because at 2 waves at a time it would be in action of it. It's fine if one wave it can ride and fall on it, but when you get 2 waves, it sort of leaves a crest, and it creates hinge effect and things. So anyway, that's what the float, they'll redo the float designed for this ramp, and then this A-frame system will allow them to, on most occasions, just lift the ramp up, because it's a pretty nasty spot over there, almost on a daily basis, but it's a pretty nasty spot.
Very exposed. Councilor Worthley?
Yes, thank you. So first, as a procedural question, are we borrowing more money, or I think we're accepting some money to make this a larger project. Is that right?
John?
No, we were not borrowing more money. So we're increasing the capital project appropriation to account for the fact that we received the FEMA grant. So that's all it is. We've already borrowed the money that was originally approved. And at this point, it is, hopeful that whatever we have remaining to do over there can be covered and will be covered by the additional grant proceeds.
I think it's great we get the grant. I just want to be thoughtful here. This is requesting an amendment to the loan order, and it was really an accepting of additional money and amalgamating it, right? So I want to make sure we aren't creating a problem in the paper trail of, is it additional loan? Because it is an amendment to borrow more money. But what you're saying is we're already done the borrowing and we're adding in the insurance money.
So we still need an appropriation, Counselor, in order to expend. And basically our loan orders say that The mayor can accept grants, donations, manna from heaven, and expend those on the project. But we do need an appropriation order to, actually expend the funds. So that's how we do it.
And I just want to, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but does that mean we should be changing some of this language instead of amending the loan order, amending the appropriation? Is that more appropriate, no pun intended, to keep this all aligned?
No, because otherwise where we end up in certain situations is spending, funding a capital project over multiple funds. And then when somebody asks 5 years from now, what did you spend on it? We're going to be throwing our hands up and going, we don't know. We got to look across 850 funds. So no, this is the better way to do it.
Okay.
Counselor Gross,
Are you all set there,
come
Jeff?
back to you, Jeff.
Well, I have a few other questions, but on waterways issues, I'm always going to on lots of issues, but this one in particular, I'll defer to Tony.
Well, I would just like to say that this actually illustrates the worthiness of having that language in the loan order so that we don't have to go back and do any more staff work for one, but also it's easier to account for by having the language in there of gifts and grants and manna from heaven and, the such. So I think that this really does attest to the wisdom of having that in there so that we can just keep the same language with the understanding that we know because we've read the original part that said it in it. So that's.
So we know, and I respect, I don't think there's any malfeasance here. That's not my mindset here. It's just, I want to be thoughtful about if this is a waterways enterprise,
No.
waterways enterprise account.
It's not.
It's not.
Is this
not.
paid for by the waterways board?
No, this was completely city funded. Had nothing to do. I wasn't even invited to the meetings as chair. So
Okay. I understand. I just didn't want to have people paying more money for some money we're not using because we actually have the insurance money. So I'm okay there. I have a few other questions just in general. I know very little about construction and even less about boating. So I don't want to ever presume that I'm an expert on any of these subjects. I do just want to ask, who is responsible for, or what department is responsible for lifting the boat out based on pending weather? Not the boat, the ramp out.
Mike, I
That'll
would
be
say.
done in
Harbor-
coordination.
Yeah.
It's a coordinated effort between the Harbor Master's Office and Public Works for all this work. We assist him with as many ramp and float removals and installations as we possibly can every single year. So this will be no exception. And the idea that we may be able to, pull the ramp back to the beach, that'll be again a coordinated effort between Harbor Master and Public Works. He does the water side, we do the land side.
Okay, just add that to your job description. Yet another thing we ask you to do, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I understand this is not going to address the gallows issue. Who is the user of the ramp? And I'm not, again, I know nothing about this. Who uses the ramp? Is it people who are bringing their boat there and like a landing, or is it, I don't even know.
Well, Jeff, just to, if I may, Chairman, you said this doesn't address the
Please.
gallows issue. I don't think that was what you meant to say, because this is the gallows issue.
Sorry.
The dinghy issue?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't speak.
Could you just restate the question then?
Yes. So I understand that this addresses the gallows issue. But who uses the ramp and like who uses this? Who's the customer?
can I answer that? You are. I am. The public is.
I understand. But is this like kids jumping off? Is it boating? Is it
Everybody.
commercial?
Everybody.
Okay, it's good to know. And then my last question is there a way, going to the end of summer, beginning of fall, is there a way to expedite this in some fashion so that we can capture the beginning of next season? Where right now, the way it sounds like is you're not going to start till the spring, summer, and I'm sure it takes a while to construct this.
It's a permitting issue, not a construction issue.
Well,
And then bid.
and you have weather concerns.
I understand that.
You're not going to deploy major barges and things down out there, during, it's going to have to wait for steady weather.
I understand. Not gonna do it during hurricane season. Okay. I have no issues with the loan authorization amendment. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you had an additional?
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, because this has been, since February, our office has been pushing it along, and, we're dealing with, as Mike said, and Tony, permitting. There's a lot of moving parts. So we're trying to expedite it as quickly as possible. The major components of the holdup, because I don't know what the holdup was before I got here, but after I got here, the holdups were, first of all, identifying the funding to do the engineering, and then identifying the funding to fund the project, which came in the form of manna from heaven with that check from FEMA. So, but we were still moving along without having that funding identified. It's just, fortunately, here it is, as we're ready to get things really kicked into high gear.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yep.
I just want to make sure, Mr. Mayor, you know that I wasn't, if it came out this way, I didn't mean it. This wasn't me saying your office is moving slowly. I just meant if anything on the council side that we can do to expedite it, to be helpful to you in getting this done. So I just want to be clear that.
Oh, no, not at all. I don't take it personally. It's questions. These are questions that are going through people's minds out there. So I'm glad we have an opportunity here to have them asked and to have them answered.
Thank you.
If I may also, I know you're not familiar with Chapter 91 and DEP process, but it can be, if they get within 12 months, get a permit for it, they've done, it was expedited. It is in, I mean, so there's been some personnel changes there. So hopefully the longtime personnel that had been there for decades have left, but it was glacial pace. I mean,
On how to slow things down.
unconscionably glacial was the pace. So
That's very true.
if they can get this permitting done by spring, that'll be in record speed.
I understand. There's nothing we can do as a council,
Nothing.
this vote or other votes, to be helpful to move that along, right? It's all-
We're moving it ahead here as requested by the administration.
Got it.
If
Thank
there are
you.
no other questions, I'll go ahead and read the motion for tonight. Seeing none. Budget and Finance moves to recommend the City Council approve the loan order as amendment as follows. The loan order amendment as follows. Order that the loan order 2019-001, certificate of vote 2019-054 of this council approved March 26, 2019, authorizing the borrowing of $900,000 to pay costs of the demolition of the existing and reconstruction of a new Magnolia Pier as amended by certificate of vote 2019-088, approved June 11th, 2019, in the amount of $1,150,000, is further amended in its entirety to provide as follows: that the City of Gloucester appropriates $1,541,350 to pay costs for the demolition of the existing and reconstruction of a new Magnolia Pier, including costs incidental or related thereto. To meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law 40, Chapter 44, Section 7, or pursuant to any other enabling authority. The mayor and any other appropriate official of the city are authorized to apply for, accept, and expend any grants or gifts that may be available to the city to pay costs of the projects. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any premium applied to the payment of costs of issuance of such notes and bonds, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. Further ordered, that the treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under Chapter 44A of the general laws, any and all of the bonds authorized by this order, and to provide such information and execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board may require for these purposes, and I so move.
Second. That may be the
Third.
longest motion I've ever heard.
Yeah, well, it's the same template pretty much. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote. Counselor Gross,
Yes.
Counselor Worthley,
Yes.
Counselor Memhard, yes. The motion passes on a vote of 3-0 unanimously in support.
Mr. Chairman, I need to jump off now, so I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of our staff.
We're going to go up and dig up Mount Pleasant Avenue in your absence, but part
I'm
of our,
heading over there now. I've got my shovel.
okay, thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye, Greg.
So item number 4 on our agenda this evening is memorandum from the Chief Financial Officer regarding a loan authorization request in the amount of $4 million from the DPW Director for funding of water and sewer infrastructure repairs along Mount Pleasant Avenue. And Mike, the ball is back in your court. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mount Pleasant Avenue is one of the older transmission mains remaining in East Gloucester and probably the entire city. There's 3 main legs that go out to the point: Atlantic Road, East Main Street, and Mount Pleasant Avenue. Obviously, Mount Pleasant and East converge further east you go. But, just the condition of that main warrants it being replaced. Probably should have replaced 30, 40 years ago, but here we are today. And certainly we recognize the need for Mount Pleasant Avenue to be paved. National Grid has an interest in replacing the gas work. There are some pockets where sewer is not available. There's a small portion of this loan authorization, $750,000, that'll go towards kind of filling in those gaps to take care of some poor septic systems and provide people with options. And the project is moving right now under a on-call contract with Grenice. Bypass set up. We needed to kind of get ahead of it. Sorry, hold a second. So the loan order is 3.25 for water, 0.75 for sewer. And this will be Mount Pleasant Avenue from, including a small piece of Haskell, but from Beach all the way to East Main Street. And we will get as much done before the snow flies. I imagine the gas company will be there during the winter. We may be doing some sewer infill during the winter as well. Good project, well-deserved project for the neighborhood and a needed project for that neighborhood.
It's exciting to see it underway. I drove it this evening. It looks like the temporary bypass water is pretty much completed, I gather, and appreciate your copying us on the communications that went out to the Mount Pleasant Avenue community, notifying them of the project and who to contact with any questions or concerns.
Yes, we have a very good resident engineer on site daily. The city's engineering staff is supporting his efforts, and certainly the contractor we have is top notch.
Do councilors have any questions for our DPW director regarding this, or to John Dunn? Councilor Gross, no?
No, pipe in the ground.
A lot of pipe. Councilor Worthley, and it's an old neighborhood, an established neighborhood.
I have a few questions. Mike, thank you again for your work on this in the engineering department. The residents there deserve this work to be done. Firstly, so what impact will there be to people who live there in terms of water pressure? Will they be without water at some points during this project? Will they get new paving, sidewalks, and all that, or is it just pipe in the ground?
The project includes resurfacing, includes restoration of sidewalks, the infill of sidewalks. All construction projects, there is a disruption in daily life. There's construction vehicles to maneuver through and around. There's detours from time to time. There's inconveniences when they're working directly in front of your home or in front of an intersection trying to turn into. We try to prepare for these things the best we can. I think generally speaking, neighborhoods adapt very quickly to this type of work, and they aren't bothered by it greatly. And again, it's a very personal relationship you have with the contractor. Some people may find it completely inconvenient and don't like the project. Some find it easy enough to work with, but those who don't find it convenient, we try to work with them more if necessary. Each resident would have received a continuation of special needs form should they need Meals on Wheels, or there's a courier that goes to your house daily, or oxygen delivery, or VNA services, whatever that may be. We know that in advance. If they fill the forms, don't submit them to us, so we can alert the contractor and the police details that, at 10 o'clock, Mrs. Smith's going to have the VNA over to work on a rehab, whatever it may be. And that's a project by project thing that we do, and it works very well. So there are disruptions, there'll be inconveniences. There may be short durations of no water when we're connecting people to the new main. But people are all on bypass right now, so we can rip the old main out of the ground and stick the new main in its current home.
Great. Is there anything we can do? Obviously, Councillor Memhard, the Ward 1 councillor, this is his territory and he does a great job with it. Is there anything we can do to be helpful in communicating? I'm sure you get it under control, but is there anything we can do to be helpful in communicating to residents or hearing from residents? That was a question to Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, obviously, there's no communication is bad communication. So, belts and suspenders. I mean, we try to provide as much information directly to the project participants as we can. We will be updating our social media and the city's webpage accordingly. Any major notices will go to certainly the ward councillor. And if there's an opportunity that he needs some additional support, I'd really leave that up to him. I don't think I need anything directly from the other 8 right now. But if there, as an at-large counselor, if you felt the need, you wanted to get more information to satisfy a constituent's questions, we're here to answer those questions.
I'm happy.
I would point out that Councillor Grow is a resident of this neighborhood, and he's actively involved and with me reaching out and making sure that the neighbors are appropriately informed and that we're in touch with what the DPW is sending to them for communications.
I have no doubt. Is there if residents have questions, do they go directly to the ward councillor? Is there a number they call in your department? How is that handled? I just want, if anybody's on the meeting tonight, I want them to hear how that works, if they haven't already.
Project notifications were delivered to each home with a number of numbers, or series of numbers, depending on their needs.
Okay.
And so if they have a question on something, there's live numbers that they can call. And, obviously if there's a water break, you call the police department and then they notify the proper, DPW contacts for emergency calls. But we have, I believe the numbers are pretty adequate given the size of the
Great.
project.
I don't mean to suggest you don't have it under control. It sounds like you do. 2 last questions. One's a timing question. The project's underway. You're asking for funding now. How does that play out? I'm not saying I'm going to support this, but what if the council said no? Then what do you do mid-project?
We just began. We began because we don't have much construction season left at all. It's for all intents and purposes, it's October 1st. I'm not having bypass laid out after mid-November unless we see long-term, a week-long forecast above freezing. We've had too many bad stories of years past where bypass out too late is bad for people's careers. So we intend to get the bypass offline when it gets cold. If the council said no to this is an on-call contract, I'd pay out of my budget. It'd be a hit to what they've done so far. But it's a chance that I've had to take. It's procured properly because they are, again, on call. We encumbered enough through my budget to get them started.
I do not anticipate the council saying no. I know I'll be supporting. I just want to know from a planning and timing standpoint. My last question is to John Dunn. Every year we hear people say the water rate is the highest in the state, the sewer rate. Can we just at least, and I think it'd be great to have this regularly whenever we have these borrowing. Can you tell us roughly, I know there's lots of variables, but how much does this add to the sewer bill and the water bill?
Nope, can't tell you that right now. I can certainly do some work and, perhaps come up with, with an estimate, as you know, part of
I'm sorry.
Part of this is, how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to be divided between water and sewer? Mike has an estimate right now, and it seems reasonable, but we don't know what the actuality is going to be. I have no idea, frankly, it's scary a little bit, what the interest rates are going to be when the debt is finally issued. There's too many balls in the air that go out into the future that I have no idea where they're going to land. But yes, again, this is one of the things, like many things in a municipality, where if you don't do it, it's probably going to cost you more. And if it's a decision that this is something that we have to do and should do now, then unfortunately, if it's going to cost some money, it is.
I just want to make sure everyone understands my intention. There will be a counselor who says they don't want to support the water rate or the sewer rate, yet they'll be voting yes on this. And this is a needed project. And I just want to get some sort of rough guess if it's $1 more per 1,000 gallons, or if it's $20 more. I mean, I know it's not 20, but just kind of a bearings. And I know that you can't answer that question now.
It'll be a factor. I think that's fair to say,
Yeah.
amongst others.
I think if you're going to, as a council, if you're going to vote for the borrowing because you want to see the projects done, you have to support the rate that supports that. And I just think that's should be built into our understanding, even though you can't build in an estimate right now.
And we can make an estimate of what it might be, but again, that is just going to be an estimate. And that is going to be based on, the expenditure of the full amount, and some estimate of what the interest rate might be in the future.
And I would never be able to dissect this piece out of the total rate. So if you had a rough guess, I just want to get a bearing on where that is. But if you can't now, that's fine. I'm ready to move forward. Thank you for letting me ask these questions.
And I think it's fair to say that, as Mike began, it's long overdue, and this is a critical infrastructure through the heart of East Gloucester, and I think the neighborhood is pleased and excited to see it start. It is a disruption and a nuisance, and getting the kids to East Gloucester School is a little more challenging than it was before, but I think the contractor's been working very collaboratively with the neighborhood, and people are learning how to make their way to East Gloucester School or other destinations without using Mount Pleasant Avenue if possible. Councilor Gross.
Yeah, I think to Jeff's point about, I think, at budget time and, 7 months roughly when we're talking about budget, I think we need to remind our fellow counselors that, constituents are served by, good water and sewer service, and it costs money to do that. So I think that we need to remember to remind our fellow counselors at budget time, I think, is the important message there.
And the other part of this, I would just point out, is the resurfacing of the road at the end of the infrastructure improvement project. And I know that Councilor Grow and myself are very pleased for our neighborhood constituents and appreciative to the mayor and to the DPW that they're moving ahead promptly with this, more promptly, in fact, than I had anticipated. So it's overdue and it's underway. So that's good from our point of view.
It's a good project.
Any other questions? There's another long loan order, loan authorization,
It's okay.
which I shall read. The Budget and Finance Committee moves to recommend that the City Council approve the loan order as follows. Ordered that the City of Gloucester appropriates $4 million to pay costs related to water and sewer infrastructure work along Mount Pleasant Avenue and connecting roads, including costs incidental or related thereto. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law Chapter 44, Section 7 or Section 8, or pursuant to any other enabling authority. The mayor and any other appropriate official of the city are authorized to apply for, to accept, and to expend any grants or gifts that may be available to the city to help pay the costs of the projects. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. And further ordered, that the treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under Chapter 44A of the general laws, any or all of the bonds authorized by this order, and to provide such information to execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board may require for these purposes. And I so move.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Questions? Seeing none. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Worthley,
Yes.
yes. Councilor Memhard, yes. The motion passes with a vote of 3-0, unanimous in support of the motion. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, sirs. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
And so the next item on our agenda. Yep, carry on. And I'm sure it's a very trying week for you. The next item on our agenda is a memorandum from our fire chief, Eric Smith.
Do you want to go back up to number 2?
Firefighter grant in the amount of 300.
Mr. Chairman, did you want to go back to number 2 to?
Eric's with us, I don't believe.
Okay, all right.
I say,
sounds good.
Eric, can you hear me correctly? Yeah, Eric Smith is with us and has been waiting, and I don't believe Elise is present tonight.
Correct. Sounds good.
So
Yep.
I'd rather deal with the fire chief and get him. So this relates to acceptance of FEMA's Assistance to Firefighter Grant in the amount of $320,400 for sprinkler and fire alarm systems at 3 outskirt fire stations. Chief Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. Yes, so we bring before you yet another of the many FEMA grants that we've been successful in being awarded. A lot of credit goes back to all the members in the department that have stepped up to help with this. You know, they've gone above and beyond for, I don't know, I think we're going on year 6 or 7 of getting, you know, pretty significant and large grants each year. And in 1 or 2 of those years, we've landed 2 grants. So we're doing pretty well. We're doing so well, in fact, that we're kind of moved on from the health and safety aspects of things on the street that we need to help serve directly the public, such as, you know, the gear, equipment, radios, trucks, those things. So those are all fairly new due to these grants over the last few years. And now we're looking at, you know, how do we better protect the city's investments in infrastructure that we're, you know, putting a lot of focus on in the city budget, frankly, on improving our buildings and our stock that we have and the citizens' investment into government. So protecting those assets, you know, begins with fire alarms and sprinklers. You know, from our perspective, we push these things with everybody that brings forward a project, especially if it's 7,500 square foot or larger. Under the state requirements, it requires a sprinkler. You know, these stations fall under that size, so it's not a requirement, but it is definitely something that should be done, especially when you look at it from the perspective of people in those buildings overnight. You have apparatus that are diesel and gas powered. We have power tools that are gas powered. You know, so there's all sorts of potential, you know, for a fire. Thank God we haven't had one, but, you know, if we were out of the building this is going to alert, us to, hey, somebody needs to get home and handle this issue. And the sprinkler is typically handles most of it. A great example is the fire we just had on Prospect Street a few days ago. That a single sprinkler head extinguished a stove fire that was spreading to the cabinets and would have created significant damage, if not loss of life in that, where a lot of residents were home at the time. And not all of them had the ability to get out so quickly and easily, but that fire alarm got them moving. The sprinkler handled the fire, and we got there, and really it's kind of a cleanup and shut off the water flow. So they are absolute. They do the job that they're intended to do. They do it well. In almost no cases that I've ever read where there is a sprinkler system in a property where people are residing and sleeping, has a loss of life occurred due to a sprinkler, unless there was a failure of the sprinkler or inappropriate fire load in a place, so we don't really have that situation. Obviously, the fire load that's in there will be calculated and an appropriate extinguishing systems installed. So federal grant covers 90 cents on the dollar on this project. This is something I've actually been asking for many years, but it's expensive. And now we've got, a lot of help to get it done. It's going to cost us about 30 grand, a little bit under, to do it. So I think it's a very worthy thing to do. And it not only protects our investment in our people, but it also protects that firehouse in that neighborhood and all the equipment and apparatus there within. So I think it's a very worthy effort and request for funding.
Excellent. Looks like a good investment to protect all those assets and those lives. I would like to recognize and acknowledge Councillor Jamie O'Hara at large has joined us as well. Thank you for joining us, Jamie. You always seem to show up when there's a public safety related funding matter to give support to our public safety folks. Are there questions for Chief Smith? Councillor Worthley.
I know I've got lots of questions, and I'll be brief on this one too. I'll try to. First of all, this is awesome. We got a grant money to help defray the cost. Do we know what the total cost is in terms of, is it really only 320,400, or are we spending more for the difference?
Yeah, no. So the estimates that we got, and again, this was quite some time ago, between Joe Lucido and I working with the vendors in the area that do this work. So the one of the city's electrical contractors that is approved, authorized, licensed to do these fire alarm systems did the quotes for all 3 stations. I reached out to one of the local sprinkler companies that gave us some estimates back before when we put this grant in. Unfortunately, we all know that there has been significant increases in prices in everything. So I'm hoping these vendors will hold to their pricing for the most part, at least on the labor side. Now, when it comes to the cost of materials, which is obviously significant in sprinkler systems and somewhat in even fire alarms, we'll see where that ends up. But right now, all the funding that you see here is based on those quotes, and there is a cap. Even if it was more, it would end up coming out of the city's pocket regardless. The federal cap is $100,000 per building for this kind of work. So they would give us nothing more. So they're doing their part, and we have to do the match. And then anything, if it goes above and beyond that with current quotes and as the projects move forward, that would be an expense on us. So, things like, tapping into the water main, which is typically an expensive thing with permitting and the digging. I'm pretty certain that Mike and Joe have people that are expert at that. So I'm sure if the contracted costs get to be too excessive, that they may be able to prioritize that and help us out to help manage that cost. But we'll see once everything comes back. Once we can move this forward officially to really get it moving.
So I would imagine if there's additional costs, we'd be borrowing for that. It wouldn't be coming out of the general fund. Is that correct? Maybe John?
No. So generally, if there's additional costs, it will come out of the general fund. And probably, Erica's not going to be happy to hear this, but we've already talked about it today. It will come out of the fire budget. So, we don't expect any particular huge overrun. But, if we need, 10 or 20,000 extra dollars to finish the project, then that is pretty much available within the fire general fund budget for this year.
Okay. This
Good
is.
to hear.
Sorry.
I just said that's good to hear. Thank you, John.
This is a fire alarm sprinkler system for the 3 outskirts. Does the central station have a sprinkler right now?
Yeah, so the central station does have a fire alarm, and DPW actually had that upgraded. We had, I forget how many thousands of dollars of work to that to improve that and get it up far closer to current code. It's not up to, if it was a brand new building, the code is a bit different, but the layout of the building and its age make it difficult to do all of those things. So that system is in place and works pretty well. It is tied in with instant alarm. That station is staffed 24/7, as are the others. But the advantage at fire headquarters is that our dispatcher is in there. So there's at least one person in that building at all times, even if every truck in the city is on the road. Whereas the outskirts stations will sit vacant with no one in them if all those personnel have been called out on calls. So there is someone kind of there minding the store and able to hear the alarm immediately when it sounds, and then subsequently answer the phone when the alarm company calls us and says, "Hey, your headquarters is on fire at 8 School Street." Yeah, I know, I'm here. So yeah, that building unfortunately does not have a sprinkler, and to put a sprinkler in that building because of its size and age and design is exceedingly expensive. I shouldn't say exceedingly expensive. It's much more money than what the federal government will provide under this grant program. Like I said, they're capped at $100,000. So I'm certain it would go well over that, and then the city's got to reach into their pocket for the rest. We've been talking about the life of fire headquarters and its replacement since long before I got here, and was a project on my radar to attend to, and is still. But we find ourselves where we are, and we're hoping that will pick up some steam again and move forward. But we'll see. So it's again one of those things that it's going to be a lot of money. We've already talked about replacing this building, so probably now is not exactly the time.
I hope to be here when you do have some plan to replace the building, and hopefully sooner than
Me
later.
too. I'd love to get it started, and by the time I retire, hopefully someone will get to sit in that desk. It probably won't be me.
Well, maybe, who knows if we can move fast enough. Just a couple more questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So I love the idea that we're using state grant money to provide really a safety measure for city employees, right? This isn't as much a public building as it is. I mean, it's a public building. It's not something the public goes to as much as other city buildings. But I wonder, do we know, and it may not be something we can talk about today, but do we know if there's grant money or if the other buildings city employees are in have sprinklers?
Yeah, so in that regard, it's actually federal money, just to correct that. So that's accurate. It's from FEMA under the Assistance to Firefighter Grant. So, in that regard, this grant can only be applied to firefighter related safety issues. But as far as all the other buildings go, there are sprinklers at the high school. There's sprinklers in many of the buildings, especially the newer stock. Much of the older stock, not so much. City Hall is one of those that I beat the drum many years ago to get sprinklered, and the funding for electrical, and we pounded on the state pretty hard for that to get some funding, and they started to move in that direction. I'm not sure exactly where that's ended up. I know, this administration has kind of rekindled that with the state and other opportunities to try to, because you have another fire, and I say another because City Hall's burned once. You have a fire there in your core of central government and your operations, it's a big deal. With the technology we have nowadays, there's redundancies and protections and all of that data and your operation, but it's still hugely impactful, right? So yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's critical that we do this in every structure and building that we can, especially if we plan to stay there for a long enough duration to make that investment worthwhile. But again, the funding and cost of it it's crazy expensive, especially in old buildings to retrofit.
I'm almost done here. So
He always freezes right before that final question. Jeff, we can't hear you.
I do wonder, on the buildings that we rent, I'm sorry, did you guys lose me?
Yep,
We did lose
at
you.
some point.
You were saying about the buildings that we rent?
Yeah, so first, I think it's great to protect firefighters, and we probably should have that same availability of services for other city employees. But then I wonder about buildings that we rent. Do we know Pond Road, the preschool, industrial park, St. Anne's School? Do we know if there's fire protection and sprinklers and alarms there? Is there some city responsibility, or can there be some sort of local code to make sure that if we're going to rent a building, we're protecting all the employees or city citizens or students for that matter?
Yeah, so I can answer directly to almost every single building in the city does have a fire alarm system. To the best of my knowledge, I don't go out and firsthand do the inspections, my personnel do. But we certainly know that we have fire alarms in every single building, including, the current St. Anne's building, which we went through a huge, reconstruction and an improvement back when that was initially done for the West Parish project. So, there has been major improvements in that building and its life safety. But the difference between the buildings you're talking about and fire stations is that, in fire stations at night, people may be asleep in those buildings, right? Much like your home. And so, when you look at the codes and the things we've been pushing for in the fire service regarding sprinkling for many, many years, most people die in residential fires in their homes. We don't in this state require sprinklers in your homes. Yet we'll get into a big debate and a press for a sprinkler in a building that people are awake and walking around and shopping or working with a working fire alarm that they frankly can get up and walk out in almost every instance. And we're kind of out of order, in my opinion, on our priority on what buildings should have sprinklers. Now, granted, I absolutely agree these larger buildings have to have sprinklers. You hit 7,500 square feet and you get that building burning, and if it takes off, everything around it is at risk, a much greater risk than some smaller buildings that may be easier to contain with the first arriving fire company, right? So there's a logic to all of the above. One of the pieces that still kind of gnaws at me is we lose more people in their homes to fire, yet this state and many others still has not passed requirements for sprinklering in homes, at least in new homes. Obviously, retrofitting is a whole nother issue. You can't really go there, but we still don't even have it on new homes. It's a little frustrating.
Maybe we can work on that. I just want to make sure I heard this correctly, though. The preschool and St. Anne's School do have sprinkler systems?
No, they have fire alarm systems. There may be a sprinkler system actually. Well, I'm not sure that the preschool, I don't know that they're conducting preschool at the school district building anymore. I believe that is in the high school, which is sprinklered. I think they relocated those, but again, that's a question for the school department as to where those operations are, honestly. But certainly the high school sprinklered. The fire alarm at the high school is recently replaced, same as O'Malley has been recently replaced. So all the schools have, viable operating fire alarm systems, as do I believe most every building that city employees are in. Pond Road, I believe, is sprinklered because it is fairly new. I mean, relatively new, and is certainly over 7,500 square feet. But honestly, I'd have to walk in there and look up to make sure.
You're busy enough as it is. Is there a way to get some sort of report in whatever?
Yeah, if you go on the city assessor's page and look that property up, it may list if the building has a sprinkler system in it already. If it was required, a lot of times those things are listed in there.
If I don't find it there, I'll put a request into the mayor's office. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm-
Yeah, or you can just shoot me an email to remind me, Jeff, and I can have my inspector let us know,
Thank
because
you
they
very
will
much.
know.
Appreciate you.
Great. That wasn't really related to tonight's motion, but I appreciate the question, Councilor Worthley, and it's a helpful discussion for the public to be aware of those issues and matters. If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and read the motion related to this. There are actually two parts, the first relating to accepting the grant and the second to our city share. Budget and Finance would move to recommend that the City Council accept under Mass General Law 4453A a federal grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, for a fiscal year 2021 Assistance to Firefighters Grant, AFG, in the amount of $291,272.72. The purpose of this grant is to fund the purchase of sprinkler and fire alarm systems for 3 outskirt fire stations with a 10% local match requirement of an additional $29,127.28 that will be funded by the City of Gloucester. The grant period is from September 2nd, 2022 to September 1, 2024, and I so move.
Second,
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there further question or discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councillor Gross,
yes.
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard, yes. The motion passes 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thanks,
The
Chief.
second half of this relating to our match is a supplemental appropriation budgetary request 2023 SA5 from the treasurer in the amount of $29,127.78. And the motion reads as follows: to move to recommend that the City Council approve supplemental appropriation 2023 SA5 in the amount of $29,127.78 from the Building Maintenance Stabilization Fund, undesignated fund balance account number as noted, to the Building Maintenance Stabilization Fund, Fire Sprinkler and Fire Alarm Systems Building Improvements account number is noted, for the purpose of partially funding this purchase of sprinkler and fire alarm systems for 3 outskirt stations with a 10% local match requirement for the fiscal year 2021 Assistance to Firefighters Grant, and I so move.
Second.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further question or comment? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councillor Gross,
yes.
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard, yes. Motion passes on a unanimous vote, 3 in favor, 0 opposed. I would at this time just like to recognize that we have 3 public attendees on the meeting this evening as well. Mary Ann Albert Boucher, Melissa Gillis, Pam Toby, and Pamela Steele. Thank you all for joining us and following city business. We appreciate your engagement. The last item on the agenda this evening is a memorandum from the city auditor, Kenny Costa, regarding accounts having expenditures exceeding authorization and the auditor's report and any other related business. Kenny, the floor is yours.
Actually,
Or
Counselor,
you're gonna throw Diane right into
Before
it. We can hear from her instead.
before we do that, I think we should take up the Council on Aging donations first.
Oh,
Item number 2.
Thank you for calling me on that.
There's also
Yes.
another one on supplemental appropriation from the treasurer. Number 6, we haven't done that yet, have we?
We just did that.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was part of the fire grant, right? Sorry. My
Yep,
bad.
that was the second half.
My
So
bad.
Kenny, I hate to give you an opening and then cut you off short, but we'll get back to you.
That's okay.
We dealt with agenda item number 2, which is a memorandum from our Director of Elder Services, Elise Sinagra, requesting acceptance of donations in the total amount of $3,665. And I would move to recommend that the City Council accept cash donations under Mass General Law 4453A to support the Council on Aging in the total amount, aggregate amount of $3,665 from the following members within our community: Gary Favallaro, Andrea McKay, Marilyn Grant, Joanna Haight, Angela and David Rich, Richard Gardner, MD, and Pamela and Antonio Gentile, and Annette Hale, for a total donation acceptance amount of $3,665, and I so move.
Second.
Any questions from councilors and discussion?
Just discussion.
Seeing none, roll call vote.
Well, I was going to say, I just want to draw attention. Every dollar we get is helpful, but there are 2 donations in here. They're pretty sizable. Richard Gardner, who I don't know, $2,500, and Pamela. in a
He's
20
the dentist on Prospect Street.
Right, sorry. And then Pamela in Antonio Gentile, $1,000. I mean, it's, every dollar counts. And those are sizable. I just want to make sure they get credit for that, as you did.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
And, you know, in addition to the library, the Rose Baker Senior Center, again, the Friends of the Senior Center, the Friends of the Rose Baker Senior Center are also active in doing outreach and support and engaging in donations in a way that, as we've understood, the Elder Affairs Director is not able to within her job capacity. So the folks at the Friends of the Council on Aging are contributing to this flow of funding.
It's good news.
Again, if there's no further discussion, I'll accept a second on the motion.
Second. I think Tony might have said it.
I think you seconded it earlier, Jeff.
Okay. I'll second it.
Well, he's seconded again. That's no harm in that.
There's 4?
I'm sure that Sherry has duly noted.
I'm sure.
The motion's been made and seconded by Councillor Worthley at least twice.
At least twice.
Once is good. And roll call vote, Councillor Gross,
Yes.
Councillor Worthley,
Yes.
and Councillor Memhard, yes, and ditto to the gratitude for this support for our seniors and the programming there at the Rose Baker Senior Center. Now we'll go down to the end of our agenda and back to Kenny.
Yes, thank you. So I trust everybody received the report yesterday,
Thank you.
last evening, or yesterday afternoon. There's 12 accounts that are in a deficit. As you recall, last report, there was 3 pages. And so this report includes only the city general fund and the 4 enterprise funds in this report. So there's 12 accounts. So as you can see, it's a much reduced report. There was 10 city accounts last time. There's 12 this time. The most notable is the Council on Aging. As you recall, last year, the formula grant comes in later in the year. Perhaps, you know, if you remember last year, it came in January. So I do expect this account to be in the deficit for some time. And then some of the accounts, there'll be internal transfers that'll be completed. We weren't able to go through the entire, all the accounts. As Councilor Memhard mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, Diane Katz, she's the new assistant auditor. She joined our team, and I want to welcome her. You know, if she's been on a tour, especially today, she was at the managers meeting this morning. She's gone around to all the departments in City Hall. I do also plan to have her meet, you know, various departments at the annex, at the police, at the fire. But this morning was good, where she was able to meet many of the department heads. So we're excited to have her join the city, join our office. She comes with a lot of experience, 22 years for the town of Hamilton as the assistant finance director, town accountant. So she has a lot of experience, and we're looking forward to, you know, our office working with her. So we're very excited. So we want to welcome her to, you know, to the city. So thank you.
And
Thank you, Diane.
glad to have you.
Welcome, Diane.
Thank you.
After that
Appreciate it.
arduous interview process, good to see you landed here.
Yes, yes, me too.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilor Memhard, for assisting us during that process. You know, we had a great committee. We also had a member from the school department, Gary Frisch, the school CFO. He was also part of the process. And then also Holly, Doug Willow as well. So, and also Amit also participated as part of the process. So we feel like we had a great committee and we made a great choice. So we're very excited. Thank you.
It was really great that Amit made that offer, and that it's a tribute to your relationship with your former employee, former assistant auditor, that he was able to participate and help us in that decision-making review process.
Yeah.
And it was good to hear his voice.
Yes. So that's all I have, unless any councilors have any questions related to the report.
Councilors,
If I may?
go ahead, Jeff.
looks like we're doing well. I mean, this is a very small percentage of the budget that we're behind on, and there's all sorts of reasons why that makes sense. We decided at the last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, to not include the school department, and I think that still makes sense. But are you still looking at the school department budget in a way where if there was something that was alarming, you would tell us?
Yeah, so as part of this process, we're looking at the school budget, but we're looking only at bottom line. And I can tell you that they are not overdrawn bottom line.
Great.
So, which is great, obviously, which is great news, but, and it's still, early in the year. But no, Gary does a great job, or his team at the school, they do a great job. I expect it to be in the positive, for the year. I mean, that's, he's done a great job. That's fully what I expect. I would think I would hear first from him that there's a problem before I would find it in the ledger. But no, Gary's on top of it. He has a great team.
Can you, Kenny, can you update us as to whether he's made any progress finding a replacement for Cody?
Yeah, so my understanding, we've completed the interview process. My understanding, there is a candidate that has been chosen. I believe this week they're looking to execute a contract with that employee or future employee,
Great.
an employee contract. So I think, I feel like the candidate or the new hire will be a great asset to their team, and that new hire will work hand in hand with our office. So that's why I wanted to make sure Gary made the right decision during that process, because we also have a role in that as well. We want to be able to work with that new hire and being able to, creating new school grant, accounts, making sure the accounts, if there's any corrections, any, budget transfers that are approved by the school committee. That's something that we work hand in hand with the school department and with that, position. And if there's any issues, being able to sort that out, to correct them. And also of course, the end of year report, that position will also work on the end of year report. And, Cody did a great job, and we had a great string for a number of years with no findings. And it's a great thing that we turned that around. So also kudos to Cody. Maybe Tony, I think Tony may have had a lot of, working experiences with Cody, and he did such a great job, and we're sorry to see him go. He did such a great job, but he decided to follow his passion in IT. So it's a great thing that he's at least still with the school department, because he's still a great asset to the school.
Great, that's wonderful news. And I'm glad. I think that for Gary's sake and yours, that's good news that he's filled that role.
Yes, agreed.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Why? I have questions like asked about that, Jeff.
You should-
Just kidding.
Go right ahead. You're the chairperson. I'm sorry if I asked a lot of questions tonight. I hope it was not too.
All right.
Just trying to
Motion
keep
to
it
adjourn
all
has
on
been
top.
made and seconded. Move the question.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Councillor Gross.
Yes.
Yes,
Councillor Gross.
Yes.
Councillor Worthley.
yes.
Yes. And Councillor Memhard, yes. Motion to adjourn is unanimously approved, and I wish everybody a pleasant evening with
You
a good
too.
soaking of rain. So, things are looking up.
Yep.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, Kenny. Bye, Tony. Bye, Scott.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night. You too, Diane.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.